Yeah. So hello everyone. Welcome to today's video. So I'm continuing second part of my video on methods. Right. So far we are discussing fourth section of PMBOK 7. Essentially it talks about models and methods and artifacts. From yesterday we started looking at method. Method is means of achieving the outcome. Ways and means of achieving an outcome. Methods and models being used as inputs for project performance domains. Right. We discussed. Yesterday we extensively discussed all the data gathering analysis methods. Today we're going to talk about commonly used methods in estimating, commonly used methods in meeting and events, and other methods. Right? So let's start with estimation. What is an estimation method? Estimation methods are used to develop an approximation of work, time, or cost on a project. Right? When you want to give an approximation of work in terms of effort, in terms of schedule, in terms of time, in terms of cost. You can say that on this particular project approximately might take $10 million or $1 billion of size, and you can talk about that, right? What are the methods can be used for estimation, right? The first one is an affinity grouping, right? Examples are t-shirt sizing and using a Fibonacci number section. So what we mean by affinity grouping is we are trying to group similar kind of activity or similar projects in one category and try to group them and try to categorize them and give the sizing as small, medium, or complex or something like that. That's called affinity grouping. Is most of the time we common sensicity we can use affinity grouping is makes sense for when you run a similar kind of a project or a similar kind of an activity. Analogous estimating is a second method. It's a method that is using historical data, right? Based on the historical data available for an organization, for a particular unit or a particular company. Try to extrapolate it with the current condition, with the current context, and see that what is an estimate, right? The third estimation method is a function point. It's a method that is using try to size the amount of business functionality, and it calculates the functional size measurement of particular requirement. Function point is one of the relatively better accurate method compared to analogous or The fourth estimation method is multi-point estimating. You provide a 3 or 4 point estimation like using optimistic estimation, pessimistically what would be the estimate, and most likely what would be the estimate. You can use an empirical formula. You can use an average or weighted average of that cost and duration, right? There is another method called single point estimating compared to multi-point. Use a single point. Use the data just to calculate the single value. Give the best guess estimate. This is opposite to range estimation that include best and worst case scenario. So single point estimation will give you use your data, historical data. You can use the historical data as well. Just provide a single estimate. That could be the best guess estimate. Range estimate will have a best and worst case scenario. Right, I can say that this project can estimated to complete within 1 or 2 years. Best case scenario 1 year, worst case scenario is 2 years. Right. Another method is a parametric estimation, which is using an algorithm based on historical data. Right, you can build an algorithm, computer algorithm based on the historical data. The next method is relative estimation. What we do in relative estimation is We try to compare a similar body of works and complexity of works we had and try to assign a similar sizing for that actually. Story points is one of the best measures for relative estimation. Why relative estimation and story point estimation is quite popular nowadays in adaptive methods? Because of human minds are good in comparing, good in estimating relatively, right? Instead of giving a best guess estimate, instead of giving an analogous estimate or a multi-point estimate, it is easy for a human mind, human brain to compare and give an estimate relative basis. Right? Storyboard estimating is an assigning an abstract but relative points of effort. It tells the difficulty of a story based on the complexity and effort. How complex it is. Right? How complex it is, peeling a banana to a pineapple. Right? Relatively, what is it? What could be the best estimate? Another estimate is a wideband health technique, which is one of the examples is a planning poker. Right? So most of the agile methods are using planning pokers, where SMEs get together and they do a multiple rounds of estimates individually, and they discuss and they try to iron out the low and high estimates and come to a consensus. This process of estimating every different rounds, right, various rounds is happening till consensus. Right. So let's get on to different methods available in meetings and events. Why the meetings and events are happening? That is a primary means of communicating throughout the project, right? No project can succeed without a good communication through meetings and events. Most of the projects failed due to miscommunication, as per the statistics. Right? Let's get on to the meetings and events. The first one is a backlog refinement, which is extensively used in adaptive methods, Scrum, essentially in Scrum, and XP methods. It's a progressive elaboration, way of progressively elaborate your epics and stories. You try to clarify the product owner who chairs the backlog refinement meeting, who explains the vision and the roadmap as well as the stories and epics, and try to progressively elaborate, try to detail it out, try to deprioritize or prioritize that, try to add more details to it, a particular story where things are not clarified. So you try to refine your epics and stories and try to detail it out to get the user stories ready for implementation. It's very, very important ceremony in Scrum. Bidders conference. It's a conference or meeting with the prospective sellers. Right? When a government is going for a national highway project or a metro rail project, they will go for a meeting or a bidder conference, we call it, with the prospective sellers, which is happening before the proposal to explain what is the scope of the project, what is the expected outcome. All those things will be discussed. It is also called contractor, vendor, or pre-bid conferences. Change control board. Change control board is a very, very important meeting in predictive methods, where you do the meeting just to do analyze the impact, analyze that impact with other variables of the project, try to re-estimate our initiatives, and finally either to approve or reject that particular change. Depends on the need of the business, that depends on the complexity and impact it is having on the current product. The next meeting is a very important meeting in adaptive methods, a daily stand-up. In a Scrum, daily sync up, or it's very, very daily stand-up whatever you call it, it's a method you connect for every 15 minutes. We talk about what happened yesterday. Everybody will explain what happened yesterday, what did they do yesterday, what they're going to plan to do today, and what are the impediments they are or obstacles they are facing through, so that everybody knows and what is the help needed by other person, respect others, and try to understand what's happening on other people's development and sync up and help each other. The other two ceremonies of Scrum or Agile methods is iteration planning or sprint planning, where you try to create a sprint goal, identify the sprint backlog by discussing prospective stories, committing to that goal based on the capacity planning or based on the average velocity you. It's a start of a sprint or start of an iteration. The iteration planning is happening. Iteration review is nothing but sprint demo, where you try to review the working software or the minimum viable product or the value you deliver to customer. The customer or stakeholders will try to review and see the demos and point out the variances if any, and the team learns it and change their way of working in the next sprint, adopt according to that. Kickoff meeting is a very formal meeting which is happening at the beginning of the project to set the expectation across the stakeholders and gain common ground, explaining the common rules and expectation from the team members across other stakeholders as well, and gain a common understanding and common ground across all the project team members. Lessons learned meeting is a very important meeting that happens on every phase end of a meeting. It's lessons learned meeting and retrospective are same. Lessons learned meetings are happening in predictive methods. Retrospective is another form of lessons learned meeting happening in adaptive methods. If you take Scrum, right, we do the sprint retrospective for every end of the sprint. So lessons learned meeting and retrospective are the kind where you understand what went wrong, what we are doing well, and try to improvise on what we are doing well, try to correct what we are doing wrong, and move it along. Planning meeting. Planning meeting is happening for every project when you do the project plans. You can do the several rounds of planning meeting, right? Understand your assumption, constraint. You can do a lot of analysis in terms of assumptions and constraints, and you can do variance analysis and everything. Try to get the historical data, similar, organizational assets. You can do the planning, replanning, and everything. Project closeout happening at the end of the project closure. Project closure means that customer accepted our project, customer accepted our product, and then we are exiting from the project. So when you try to do the lessons learned meeting along with the project closure and come out with project closure report and what entire summary of what and all happened in the project and good things and bad things and everything. Project review is happening, a periodical reviews. Similar, sprint review happens on every sprint, right? A project review can happen on every phase of a life cycle, and you try to do deviation analysis and try to correct yourself. You can do you review the baseline estimates with the current estimates. Sorry, with the current actual data, and see that what are the deviations and everything. You can use EVA analysis, right? End-to-end analysis for every project review, right? So release planning is very important in adopting methods. It's release planning. You do that every 3 months or 6 months of planning to give the indication that what are the features or epics are we're going to be completing, we're going to create in that particular release. A release might have 4 or 5 sprints actually, right? Each sprint can be of 2 to 4 weeks of a sprint, so a release can span across between 3 to 6 months of, right, where the project, the product owner explains the product roadmap and everything, or the scope of the implementable features for the particular release. Retrospective is equivalent to lessons learned meeting. We discussed retrospectives are used in adoptive methods, right? Another very important meeting and events is the risk review, right? So along with the project review, you can do the risk review as well. Risk review is a meeting to analyze the existing risks and identify the new risks. Actually, you can do the PA analysis. PA analysis, what I mean is the probability and impact analysis. You can reassess that. You can reprioritize that. You can redo the impact, and you can calculate the PA impacts also. In every phase or every month or every 2 months, and you try to review your risk responses. You want to change anything, you reassess it, and you can change your risk numbers, and you can remove the risk which is no more relevant to you as well. So this is the periodical review. It's happening along with the project review to understand and to respond newly, and respond to the changes and everything. Status meeting happens, it's a regular meeting, happens a weekly or monthly meetings, just to give the picture to the executive leadership or customers, or understand how the progress is going against the baseline provided against the estimate, right? So everybody will pitch in there, give their ideas to improve the progress of the project. Steering committee is one important meetings where you will get the directions and support from the senior leaders and make decisions. So this is where the steering committee is the place where decisions were made outside of project team's authority, right? So whenever there is something you need help from executive leadership or senior leaders, or a senior leadership from customers also, you can use that committee. You can have a steering committee meeting with them. It can happen anytime, right? You can ad hoc can create it. Generally, steering committee can come at every phase or in the beginning of the project, or whenever you need a project manager looking for it, right? With that, we come to a conclusion of meetings and events, and we're going to discuss other methods. Impact mapping is one of the very much used method, which is using the graphic strategic planning method to understand the what could be the impact the product future is going to make in the market, and try to do that graphic strategic planning and try to do along with the business outcomes. You try to bring out right set of mappings for you, and bring out a right set of strategy of product strategy for you, right? Modeling is a very critical process nowadays. We are using methods like design thinking and lean startup, right? Prior to agile development, nowadays the product companies are using design thinking and lean startup. This is kind of a process of creating a simplified representation of system or the solutions such as the product prototypes, right? So the modeling, in the context of design thinking and lean startup, right, where you try to quickly develop some kind of proof of concept or prototype, that is, you can do the test marketing, right, and identify the probability of success of that particular product in the market, right? You can do multiple very quickly. You can do product companies are quickly evaluating those 2 to 4 weeks of development, and just evaluate test it in the market, redo it, and then finalize one idea and prototype and go with agile development. That's what's happening, right? The third method is a net promoter score, where it's an index that measures the willingness of customers to recommend the products to services to others. This NPS has been used for years. Actually, it's one of the very critical method to analyze the customer sentiments, right? So more the NPS, the better the for the vendor, or better for the performing organization. Prioritization schema is another method where examples are Masco. We already discussed in our agile videos, right? The Masco is using the must have, should have, could have, and won't have items, where the product owner uses that Masco model to prioritize the stories or epics. And another method is a multi-criteria weighted analysis. The final method is a time box. Time box is used in adopting methods. Scrum is using a 15 minutes time box for a daily stand-up, 4 hours of time box for sprint planning, right? You can use that. So time box is it's specific period in which you try to complete that particular development or activity. Right, so with that we have come to a conclusion of this particular video. We completely discussed every methods and it's been portrayed in PMBOK 7. Right, so tomorrow onwards we will be discussing the artifacts part of it. Right, so thanks for your listening. Right, so with that I would like to conclude today's video. So please put your comments and suggestions, or the improvement areas we're looking at. I'll try to incorporate in my videos. Thanks a lot. Thanks for patient listening. Thanks for your time. Bye bye. See you in next video.